What fears are you submitting to God? All right, this question comes from my own life. I was listening to a Bible Project podcast the other day, and they talked about manna. You remember back in the wilderness with the Israelites when they didn't have food, God provided manna. Well, on the sixth day, they were supposed to collect for 2 days so that they could rest on Sunday.
Okay.
And they pointed out how this must have been hard for them
Yeah.
because they were in a famine. They were hungry and they were already trusting in God, but they had to trust that it would be different in this system, that they could wait and God would provide for them. And I know for me, I tend to go, and I expect that my work
true.
will help me and I will be okay and I will get the work done that God's called me to because I'm working stinking hard.
You can work hard enough that it'll happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I realize is that I'm not taking enough rest in my life. And what they pointed out in this situation is that resting is what showed that they had faith in God, because they had to trust that God would make that manna last. It was supernatural. And in my life, God will show that me resting and giving it to Him is enough, because there's nothing we can do that's enough anyway. It's all
true.
what God does through us out of our submission. And so for me, I'm choosing to rest, and I've rested a little bit more in the last week or so. And I've just continued to say, God, I'm going to rest as much as I can, as much as I need, so that I can put my faith in you to say, I'm not the one that's doing this ministry. I'm not the one that's doing this work, even to be a good mom, all these things. I need to rest. And so my question for you is, what fears are standing between you and your success? So me, I fear that if I sit, if I rest, even
stop,
sometimes,
take a breath.
if I go and just do something for myself that I shouldn't be, and that I'm not going to fulfill the work that God's called me to do, or I'm not going to be good enough, maybe on a less spiritual level, that people aren't going to accept me. People aren't going to like me. But if I work really hard at it, then maybe I'll be accepted. And I realize that it comes back to a fear of maybe unacceptance, or fear that I'm not good enough. And so if I work hard enough, maybe I'll be accepted, or maybe my work will have that like top-notch quality.
And maybe God will bless it.
Yeah.
Even though He's told us to take a break, we think that if we do enough, then He'll bless it. But the blessing, He's already provided the blessing.
Yeah.
So are we going to recognize it or not recognize it?
Yeah, and I think for those of you who may be like me and have a little type A personality, have a little bit of a workaholic nature, we can just remember that it's not just resting because we're lazy or because we are just insufficient, but it's resting because we're trusting in God, that God made a system to rest and that it's a good thing to do. And it really does make us better.
Yeah, and sometimes rest can feel like work. Does that make sense? Changing your mentality about something and actually taking a break can feel difficult.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a discipline that you need to take advantage of. You need to implement in your life. Maybe we need to implement in our lives sometimes better. It's a discipline. It doesn't mean that it's always easy, but maybe taking a break for you is hard.
Yeah. So where can your faith grow? I know my faith can grow when I'm putting my trust in God. And so thankfully, we're not living in a famine here in the U.S. And thankfully, we have that provision. But we can learn from the famines that have existed where God has shown up. What is the manna in your life that God has provided?
Taking care of you.
Yeah, and then where are you taking it back, saying, I've got to collect more and more, right? When we're doing all the work, the moth destroyed it. There were maggots and like all kinds of icky things that came in the manna because they were doing it of themselves. And we want God's blessing. And so the way that we get God's blessing is to trust in Him, which is hard sometimes because that means my inadequacies, I have to just face and say, God, I give them to you. I may not be good enough in every single area of life, but I'm going to give myself to you, and you can use my life for your glory.
That made me think about, we were talking the other day while we were in the car, that obedience is better than sacrifice.
Yeah.
So obedience would be taking a break. We think we're sacrificing and working really hard, but no, God, I want to give you more. I want to give you more. I want to do this. And then we don't take any time off. And the obedience to taking time off honors God more and is actually more respectful of Him and more respectful of the gifts that He's given us than going over the top and making a sacrifice of whatever your sacrifice might be.
And what's cool is that's not just a biblical principle. It's something that's supported by research, because research shows if you're staying up till 2:00 in the morning and you're studying, the percentage that you remember goes down.
Your quality of work goes down.
Yeah, and so it's the same thing. I know that when I can't think anymore to write, or I can't think anymore to parent in an effective way without raising my voice, I go, okay, I need to get a little bit more rest. And so what are those signals that maybe you might be feeling that are telling you something about yourself? So for me, sometimes it's the fears that I'm like waking up with in the middle of the night and going, okay, I'm pushing too hard and I'm not putting my trust in God. Because usually when I'm spending time with God, those fears can dissipate and I can work them out and say, God, I'm trusting in you. That doesn't mean that all the fears go away completely, because we're human.
Yeah.
We have to, daily submit it to God. But I do notice that when I'm trying to do more on my own, that it becomes, a struggle.
So let us know your thoughts. Have you had a moment where you realized, you know what, I'm giving too much and I'm not being obedient to take a break? And how does that work for you? And how do you kind of remember to do these things? Because Ashley and I are just processing and figuring things out as we go with how much do you work, how much do you not work, especially with kids and full-time work and trying to keep this together as well. It can be difficult. So how do you manage it? We'd love to hear, how do you do? So,
all right. Have a great one.
See ya.